Q&A with Xochilt Sanchez, a coordinator at CARECEN on immigrant children trauma.
Hi, my name is Xochilt Sanchez. I am an organizer at CARECEN, the Central American Resource Center in Los Angeles. I work specifically on the CARECEN Refugee Project, focusing on the refugee migrant crisis that we're seeing right now, as well as the National TPS Alliance on our TPS Residency Now campaign.
What do you think about the children being separated from their families?
It's absolutely disgusting. It's something that we know has been happening for a while, but this family separation crisis that came out of the zero tolerance policy enacted by Jeff Sessions and Stephen Miller is really what brought this crisis to the forefront. This has been happening for more than 10 years, sad to say, and it will continue to happen. That crisis where there was around approximately 2,500 families, right, who are affected, children being separated by their parents. I can assure you that it is still happening. It's probably not as bad as that particular case where there was no documentation to who parent is to whose child, right? They were not documenting any of that. They were not registering children to parents, and they did not care to do so. Something that we're even hearing from folks who have been in detention, who have been released, is that under this administration, there's a lot less actually guards inside of the prison. There's a lot less folks who come in to check on them. There'll be hours or days where they don't see anyone, a physical presence. In the case of the children, right, a number of them were drugged in order to keep them silent, stop them from crying. So there's just, beyond the family separation, there's atrocities that were committed against these children and these families in detention that are unconscionable, that will create another generation of traumatized children who will most likely not have the services to heal from their trauma. A number of them who have been already adopted by white parents or by other parents.
What is your view about the immigrant children being forced to represent themselves in immigration court?
Expectations of someone who is criminalized in detention, once they put in front of a judge, like, it doesn't really matter what you look like.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to deportation proceedings, it does not matter at all. It could be a baby, it could be elderly, it could be what have you. And if you cannot defend yourself, you really cannot. You don't stand a chance. And what we're seeing now is that instead of them doing one by one, they bring in people like 6 at a time, 6 to 8 to 10, depending on the size of the court space, shackled together, and they have them all there lined up with like one attorney to all of them. And that's usually, they do that to just like expedite the deportation.
What sort of support or treatment are the children able to get after they are released?
Kind of hard. So there's like a level of treatment that's different. So children along the border, especially in Texas, are getting the worst part of it. Like, those kids are definitely getting drugged. They're getting all types of just horrible treatment. And then what we're seeing usually with minors, they don't put them in the same facilities as adults. So they'll put them through ORR. And in California, the shelters here are a little bit better, and they're kind of shelters. They have like playgrounds. They're like made for kids, right? So the conditions there are a little bit better. There are support groups for children who basically, children and unaccompanied minors who, after they're released. There's this coalition called the Youth Care Coalition. It's led by CLU, Clergy and Lady United for Economic Justice. They basically do a lot of interfaith organizing of churches to open up their facilities to give monetary donations, help with resources, and they have a camp every summer that kind of helps unaccompanied minors meet with each other. They get psychological support, evaluations, as well as legal support. So we are seeing that work also being developed, which is very, very necessary. But in terms of, I think you're asking more about the kids who have been released from these detention centers who have severe trauma. Yes. Like the case of this kid who refuses to acknowledge his mother. Something that we're also hearing from what's happening inside these child detention centers is that they're being drugged. On top of that, they're being lied to by the guards. The guards are telling them that their mothers did this to them, that their mothers gave them up as soon as they came into the country. And for a child who has no idea why they even left their home in the first place, who knows that the last person they saw was their mom, if they're old enough to recognize that it was their mom or their dad or what have you, and know that it was like the mom giving them over to someone who's like, we're gonna take your kid because they need to be cleaned, and then they lie to them, and so then they're both being lied to, both parties, right? The kid only knows that his mom is the one who turned them over.
Yeah.
And then they're in detention for X amount of time, right? The only other people that they have are the kids in there, and they support each other through these extreme periods of trauma, of high trauma, which they're in cells, right? They're being neglected. They're not allowed to shower. Some of them are like sitting in their own filth. They're not even like given proper medicine.
You even call it the ice box.
The ice box, exactly. They put them in these like kind of really cold, small spaces, almost like solitary confinement, in order to lower their temperatures and to sedate them. So they're finding other ways of sedating them besides the drugs, right?
What history presence is there to this issue?
We know, documented fact, right? Where not only are these kids being separated, but they're being drugged, they're being highly traumatized, they're being sedated so that they are just bodies in a cell. And the historical precedents exist with the treatment of Native people and the treatment of Black people in this country.
Any final thoughts for our class?
Yeah, I just want to applaud you guys for your efforts, for the work that you're doing. I know that right now, it's just like for class and you guys are putting together projects, but like doing the research behind this work and like asking these super important questions, like never stop asking questions. Anyone challenges you, like you come at them with a bulletproof questions, because it's super important to challenge all the information that we're getting and to continue to do our own research. I thank you for all your work.